How about the allegations na pre-programmed ang SD cards at saka yung nai-intercept ang transmission?
Pre-programmed SD cards, there's no software in the SD card.
Actually.
Okay, to begin
First
with,
point.
kung titingnan natin dun sa local source code review. Well, we sent our analysts to participate in the review. And when I asked them, wala namang calls directed to the SD card to get a routine to execute. No? Execution is not on the SD card kasi it's
On the
inside the VCM, it's in the firmware. Doon sa CPU, yung execution. So, when I checked with them, wala namang calls to the SD card to fetch instructions.
So you cannot replace
So the SD card contains configuration.
Yes.
It is basically the personality of that clustered
clustered
precinct. So clustered precinct number 001011100, for example. So if you replace an SD card and take another SD card, then it becomes that clustered precinct. So it's configuration. It's not the actual software itself. The software itself is loaded in the firmware of the machine, which is tested naman during pre-lat, right? So there's this process, the election pre-logic and acceptance testing, which is done at the Comelec warehouse, open to observers, right? Where they actually test each and every machine. So 100% of machines will go through that test. At the end of the production line during pre-lat, there's also a quality assurance stage where they will extract the software and they will compare it with the hash so that the trusted build version, for example, the source code, is the one that we saw during the source code review. So that's the only part where source code was actually looked at, tested. And at the end of the day, I mean, even if we say we didn't do all of that, there's the final testing and sealing.
There's the final
right?
testing and
So
sealing,
week
right.
before election,
But this cycle, this 2022, the election observers got to participate in that review.
the source code review. Oh yeah, there are more than 60
There are more-
participants.
Mas marami ngayon, no? But it was only in 2013 that we were not able to do the source code review.
Before the elections.
Before
It was
the
opened after
After
the
the
elections.
elections.
I remember
But
that 2013.
in every election, 2010, 2016, 19, and 22, there was a code
Source
review by the local
And it's a
groups.
big group, right? And it's not just observers like us. Political parties sent their reviewers as well. And from both camps. I mean, just to be clear,
Right.
in this election, both camps did send reviewers. So that's a control as well that's
Actually,
already there.
you should ask therefore yung
Nagpadala ba
code
kayo?
reviewer.
Nagpadala sila.
Nagpadala ba kayo ng watchers?
Nagpadala sila.
Yung mga-
And William, you were talking kanina about yung modem na napapagkamalang pinapalitan yung
SD card.
SD card.
Yeah, so that one naman is, I think, a function of training, right? So we did make a recommendation, for example, to Comelec that the EB, when they do something, they explain what's happening.
Like what?
I am now going to
Into-
insert the USB
Yes.
modem for transmission. Then at least the poll watchers don't panic. And this was our poll watcher. It was a PPCRV poll watcher who panicked because they thought that the software was being
replaced.
Yeah.
Modem
But again, that's
pala.
also a function of that training. A function of training.
I-ano ko lang dito kasi when we were chatting about this, you mentioned that diba, the SD card, the personality of that SD card is also linked with the ballots
That's right.
and
Yes.
ano.
Yeah, the ballots are actually coded to match an SD card's configuration. You cannot use a set of ballots with another precinct that has its own SD card.
Yes.
So hindi pwede siyang pagpalitin.
And in the transmission, in the logistics of it, you also mentioned that there are
They're actually not
Mga-
sent
Oh.
together. So
Oo.
for the record, the ballots are printed at the National Printing Office. They only meet the VCMs on
At-
election day.
On election
On election day.
So they
and
go
all of
to
these
municipal
have,
treasurer's
serial
office.
stickers and
Yeah,
yeah.
tamper evidence stickers and
Oo.
all of that. In coffin-looking black boxes.
Yeah.
Did
No,
you,
it's black.
Did you have to point that out? Okay.
Wala lang. Just
How
an
about the
observation.
issue naman na there are more votes than voters in certain precincts? Nangyari ba ulit ito? Parang may
We
mga
looked into
lumalabas.
this, di ba?
Yeah, so
And then
yeah.
yung ibang precincts naman daw, bakit certain candidates got 0 votes? Imposible daw yun.
Actually, yung 0 votes, that's something we look at every election.
Every
Meron talagang
It-
0
it
votes.
does happen.
Oo.
Yeah.
It does happen.
Although this year though, mas madami mas madami yung
Sa amin marami. Mas marami.
mas madami ngayon.
Hindi naman 0, 99. So we
Which
did
is
that
not
99.
necessarily like a function of the,
The system.
automated system, but it's more of yung on the ground, like could be
Wala talagang bumoto.
Black voting.
or
Block
black
voting.
voting.
People were
Um,
pressured.
Or pero pwede din namang people are pressured. William was talking about that methodology that was I forgot the name of that think tank, but it's from California. It's called the fingerprint of election thieves, but it's really like it's comparing the total votes, the total number of voters in a precinct. So if it's like if the total number of voters in a precinct, like most of them voted, like halos walang nag-absent, walang nagkasakit, and so on.
So high turnout.
And then so very high
Yung
turnout.
100% turnout eh.
Oo, yeah, like ganun. And the
meron.
combination of that with combine that with like most of that went to the winner. Then there's that higher probability
suspicious,
that
yeah.
Suspicious
Oo.
na siya.
And we've looked at that in previous elections. Usually that happens in areas where there are,
Controlled areas.
Known
controlled
controlled
votes.
voting. Yeah. So we did 4 types of analysis, and as Gemma mentioned, so every election we do it. Number 1 is high voter turnout. If 99% of registered voters showed up, we flag it and we did an analysis. And we compared 2010, 16, and 19, the number has been increasing. Right? So that's the first thing we watch out for. The second thing we watch out for is overvoting rates. Because there is a alleged mechanism where people will claim that the machine is not working, they collect the ballots, then they say, you go home, we'll
then
insert
we'll
it for you,
yeah.
and they would insert it. But if they look at the position and, did not vote for my candidate, they overvote it. So there are reports of that happening. So in that particular case, we do watch for overvotes, and that's the second thing we watch for. And across, again, the 3 elections, 10, 16, and 19, the number has been increasing. The third thing we watch for is clustering of votes to a candidate, or what we call block voting. So we don't do 0 because we found cases where there really was
zero.
nobody who voted
Yeah.
for anybody. So 0 is not a very good indicator. So we did 99%, right? So in those cases, we looked at president. So 99 voted for one presidential candidate. 99% of voters in that clustered precinct voted for one president, one vice president, clustered to a senator, not necessarily one senator, and their House of Representatives. So we did that analysis. And again, the number is increasing. Right? So these are the things that I think we should look out for. Now, things that we also looked at that nothing spectacular is transmission happened before 7 p.m. None.
Which walang nangyayari.
None.
708 was
More
Seven,
voter,
oh,
yeah,
ang
more,
ready naman yun.
Yeah,
more
the earliest.
voters than
707
registered voters in the
708.
clustered
Oh,
precinct,
okay.
none din.
None.
Right? And again, we have this long list of things we check for. Overvoting more than voters, undervoting more than voters. So we did, every single suspicious analysis across the years, we'll hear it in 2010 and we run the analysis every election. So we have this list of tests that we do.
Sanity checks.
Yes.
To see lang. So
Yeah.
that's the additional check. And the last point is on the what if na-tamper during transmission. So that's why we do the UPC, right? So the unofficial parallel count of the PPCRV is basically an activity where we get the 4th copy of the election return and we compare it against the transmitted copy. The idea is, in 2010, we didn't know a lot about the system. We did not do source code review. The transparency we get today versus in 2010 was very different. So we were designing a test. Okay, let's assume we have a poll watcher in every polling place. Let's assume we can attend all the FTSs. But how do we ensure the transmission wasn't tampered along the way? That's why we designed the UPC. The idea is if we get the pre-transmission copy, that means nothing was plugged into the machine until transmission. We got that copy before.
Right.
And if we compare it with the transmitted results and they match, then that is the results. So we do that for every election. So this is the 5th we've done it for. It's the biggest by far. I think we've gotten over 96,000 election returns. We were able to verify by the point I checked the records. I was trying to see if we have a newer number, but by the point we checked, we had already 74,000 verified, which is the highest ever we've ever had. Right? So I think there are more volunteers now. More of our parishes have sent returns. And at the same time, we have spectacularly more volunteers at the command
grabe
center.
yung
We were only
volunteers.
expecting 2,000, we got 10,000, right? So that's an activity we do precisely to check against electronic dagdag bawas.